Hello, my name is Jude Flaherty and welcome to Flaherty Boutique's teaching space. In this section I'll be showing you how I do my first wax, which is in essence the waxing out of the whites on your cotton. As with all my paintings, I use a frame. I dye with Procyon MX dyes onto lawn cotton, and I use paraffin wax. This short video will explain how my basic waxing technique is, and I use Kiskers, which are in essence fine lining jantings. I hope you enjoy my first video. So one of the first things to remember when you're using a janting or a Kisker is to keep the Kisker as level as possible, as you've got hot wax in the top reservoir, and also if you move around too quickly it might spill out at the top. So you can go quite slowly. Make sure your wax is nice and hot. So as you can see here, I am using the finest Kisker possibly. I've got a line drawing which I'm at this stage actually following quite religiously, because at this stage you have no context within the image, and the whites will end up becoming the anchor that you pull all your other image off of. So they take a bit of time. It's the thing I hate the most in the whole process, but if you get it right, then it will make life a lot easier, and this is actually for me where you make the most mistakes. You can now see that I've changed to the blue Kisker, which is the medium-sized Kisker. So I'm now beginning to fill in around the fine detail with that, having outlined it with the finest Kisker. From there I go to the thickest Kisker, which is the red coloured one, and again continue to fill in where the details are. I tend to go over the wax I've already done with a heavier Kisker, a fatter Kisker, because being such fine lines, the wax covering is very fine and you then need to protect it with additional layers. So once I get to a certain point I can go on to brushes, and then it's a lot easier, and you can cover lots of ground together. Key thing to do is to make sure your wax is nice and hot and overlap where you've worked before, so that you don't get obvious seams. I will be showing later how, if you have got seams in it, as in bits that it hasn't quite covered the wax with because it suddenly was a little cold or something like that, I'll show you how you can remedy those with a technique which I call Bernie in. Now what I'm doing is basically putting the outline of the sky in, which will be eventually will be built up, and so I can then cover the whole of the sky area in. Although I've been talking about this being a white wax, I did put a very, very pale wash on to start with. It breaks up the whiteness and the starkness of the whiteness in the sky, although a lot of it will be lost when it comes to framing. Using a nice hot wax with a brush, you just try and put the layers on as evenly as possible, the strips on overlapping them, and you can build up a big area quite quickly. Be careful that you don't drip as you're going towards it. I'm a little more relaxed because I know my tools. But it's always good to ensure that as you're bringing the wax over, you have a hand or a tissue below so it doesn't drip in a place you don't want. Because as you know, once it's there, you can't get rid of it. So once I've got most of the sky in, I'm now just cutting in the detail around some leaves at the top, I'm using my plan to make sure that I actually make the sky show between the leaves in the right places. Obviously, as you go on, if you do make mistakes, you can rectify them by changing the shapes. But at this stage, it's very prescriptive, and it gets the structure of the whole batik in place and gives you a reference for everything else that you're going to do. As someone who likes colour, I find this section of creating a batik the most boring. But if you don't do it properly, you're already on a road to disaster. So I have to grin and bear it. So by using the pencil end, which is light, so therefore it shouldn't distort, shouldn't weigh down the material too much, I can actually identify a shape on the plan, and then I can get some janting, I can get some wax, and I have a reference to go back to of where I found the shape I want to fill in. When it comes to the skies, you will always get seams as you lay it on. There are a number of ways you can do to fix that. What I'm first going to show you is burning in. By heating up the end of a spoon, you can lay it across the material, and you'll see that actually the wax will go darker as it melts and penetrates the cloth far more efficiently. So you can in essence rub out all of the cold areas where it hasn't gone into the wax by just putting a bit of heat to it. I use all sorts of instruments and implements for that, and as you can see there, I use screwdrivers. Make sure that you wipe the screwdriver before you use it. Often, as you can see, I'm working on my dirty stove, and you don't want to transfer any soot or fat onto your cloth, so you just wipe it with a thing. I wipe it with a towel. What I often do is also wipe it down my legs, hence the reason why I must remember to start wearing my overalls again. So be careful not to overheat the instruments, because you just literally want to melt it. You don't want to burn the material, and you just rub across very lightly, and you will see it'll start to melt. One of the things that you will then need to do is, because you've melted the wax and it could well have penetrated through the cloth too much, what I end up doing is I tend to double wax, which means that I wax on both sides. I will also go back and put another layer of wax on the sky, because the sky's got to be there for quite some time throughout the whole process, and I want it to be as robust as possible. So a lot of time is spent making sure that you can get this right. I never do it perfectly. I always find I've missed a spot. It doesn't matter. It will be fine, but ultimately this is the time that you have to make sure you've really got that wax sealed in. Here you can see that I'm actually, by putting the batik against the window and using a heated screwdriver, I can actually easily burn in any areas of detail that I've slightly missed. There are holes or there are bits that haven't quite penetrated the cloth as much. So you just go round and just basically you just what I call tidying it up. Again, this is really important, as some of these areas are going to take very dark dye, and you need to make sure that you've got lovely crisp lines. Obviously with this you can modify any shapes, and if there are shapes that you don't like, that are ugly or are just wrong, you can tweak them here, because ultimately part of what a batiking is all about is creating beautiful shapes of colour that then create an image. Well, that's me done for the day.